So assuming that you are set up with your chair and your mats, and if you are using dumbbells, you can have them close by, and then you can have your water close by. We are going to get started. You don't need shoes, and I actually don't even recommend socks unless you have like some grip under your sock, just because it helps with not slipping. But you know your body best, and you know your house best. If you're on carpet, you probably having socks is okay. Feel free to play your own music, like I said before. I'm playing music really quietly here just for my own purposes, but you don't have to. All right, we're going to start with our warm-up. So in first position, it's turned out. So my toes are pointing to the corners and my heels are together. We're going to start with our side bend. Don't quite need our chair right now. And if you want to start the first week with just some arm movements, ease into the workouts, it's fine. And then start to add that side bend. I'm reaching up and over. So I woke up like, what, 45 minutes ago. So this is definitely my morning workout of the day. Getting that bed stiffness out of my body. And we go through different movements. We're starting with lower body stuff. Lower body movements. You can always modify. You never have to lift your leg to a specific height. If the leg calls for being straight, it's the most effective way to do it. You usually target a certain muscle, but if you need to keep your knees bent, feel free. All right, let's finish the last one here. Good. And then if you need your chair for balance, that's what it's there for. Not to yank on it, but just to gently touch it. We're going to go on to our tippy toes. So again, use that chair for balance as needed. And if you don't need it, you can keep your arms low. You can keep it at shoulder heights. You can go wide. Lots of options. So we're going to focus on technique just so we can target the right muscles. So right now we're targeting our calves. Our heels will separate as we come up, and then they'll touch each other as we come down. Let's do two more, and then let's bend into our plie. So a little knee bend, but those knees will track in line with those toes. That's always very important. I don't think there's a single squat or lunge you do where the knees and toes aren't in line with each other. Whether we're doing curtsy lunges, basic lunges, wide squats, narrow squats, the knees and toes are always facing the same direction. All right, so other things to think about. Our abdominals want to stay braced, and we want to keep our chest up, so good posture. Part of what helps keep the posture isn't just lifting the chest, but also having your shoulders down and relaxed. We can have our chest up with our shoulders elevated, and that kind of creates tension that we don't want. Good. So I do a lot of stuff in turnout. Part of the reason is because it's ballet inspired. But today's focus, we're also going to do stuff in parallel. Let's go ahead and turn our feet to parallel. So you want your feet hip distance apart. So this is wider than hips. Hips are, see right here, your hip bones going down. So we're going to go into heel raises again, but in parallel. This might feel a little different. And sometimes what happens is people kind of roll their ankles out like that. So just kind of watch out for that. I'm going to try really hard not to do it too. So working in parallel does feel a little different than working in turnouts. Okay. And don't worry about, lifting your heels so high you're like stilettos. Could be, 2-inch heels, 3-inch, 4-inch. Couple more. And then we're going to go into little squats. And so once again, we want those toes and knees in alignment with each other. So we're not going to have the knees come in. We're not going to have it go out. It should be straightforward. And it's a very little bend. So if I show you from the side view, my knees do move toward my toes, but they're not shooting past my toes and my heels aren't lifting. All right, so you do want to send your butt back a little bit. When you send your butt back a little bit, your chest does, or your torso does tilt forward, but it doesn't mean we're rounding the spine. So this is our narrow squats in parallel. What am I doing with my hands? All right, let's do a couple more. And let's get into our workout. So the first thing I want you guys to do, if you need your chair for balance, we're gonna lift the leg. We're gonna lift the outside leg. Usually anytime we lift the leg, it's the outside leg. So I want you to keep that stance in parallel. So everything's in parallel. And as I lift my leg, I'm really gonna try not to turn it out. Turn it out actually makes it a little easier and it works the quads and the hip flexors. Here we want to target the outer thighs. So if you're going to err on turning, I would say turn inward. You don't need to purposely be pigeon-toed, but you really want to try to keep that parallel foot. Now I'm not leaning here. I'm going to try to keep my torso upright. My standing leg will be soft, so slight bend in that standing leg. And I'm keeping my moving leg, my moving foot parallel and flexed. Flexed, because it's easier to tell that it's parallel. When I'm pointing, it's kind of hard to tell. And also my toes get in the way as I scoop the feet back in. So we are working in a flex foot position, which is not as common in bar, but it's also critical because, or important, because we can't do everything toes pointed all the time. And you do get a nice little calf stretch. You can lift your leg as high as you like, but not to the point that it's forcing your torso to tilt. So as we warm up or get a little more range of motion in the hip, and try to lift your leg higher. Good. Standing leg, remember, is slightly bent. It is doing work. It's stabilizing. So now that we've done a ton of leg lifts with our leg mostly straight, I'm actually going to have you bend into it. Like we did, remember this little mini squats? I'm going to have you bend into the leg. Take that foot out there, right? Because now that this leg is bent, it's not going to sweep all the way in once you stand up. I don't want you to stand up. I want you to really overload the standing leg and lift. You might not be able to lift that outside leg as high, but that's okay. We're going to be in a mini squat here, and we're still working on that leg lift. I know it's already burning. I'll actually count this one. So that was about 8. We'll do 8 more. So we did the first set with our leg, standing leg mostly straight. You still want to keep your foot turned in, neutral rotation. 3, 2, and 1. Good. When you stand on up, and by the way, you can stand up anytime. This releases the leg muscles. So don't feel like just because I'm still down doesn't mean you can't take a break, and then go back down when you're ready. I move my chair because I want to stay facing forward, but feel free to turn if that's easier for you. Back to our parallel stance. We never got out of it. Slightly bent standing leg, and now we are moving the outside leg. Okay, so we're active through the entire leg, right? The quads are engaged to keep the leg straight. The outer thighs are moving, contracting to lift the leg, and our foot is flexed, actively flexed. Let's not forget about our abs. Nice and braced, chest up, shoulders down, all that good stuff. Okay, so really setting up this movement here. You want to feel like you're lifting the leg versus kind of swinging it out there with momentum. You should feel your outer thighs work every single lift. Let's do 4 more, and then we're going to bend into a standing leg. Okay, so we're going to bend into the standing leg. Not so much that the knee shoots past the toes, and we lift 16. So really overloading a standing leg. Whatever should we do with our arms? Let's do 8 more. If you did boot camp with me yesterday, you're already sore. Even before this class started. 3, 2, and 1. All right. Going back to the first leg. Feel free to grab some water. Everyone good here? Okay, so we're gonna go into the turned out position. So this same thing, that outside leg is lifting, but we're starting turned out. Just notice the difference. I mean, you can feel different muscles working. This almost feels easier. Remember to not lock out the standing leg. I guess I'll lift the arm here. I just want you to feel the difference between turnouts and not turned out, or what we call neutral. And here I am pointing my toe just because I can, but I don't have to. I can keep it flexed and it'll show up. Like, because it's obvious to me whether my toe is pointed or flexed that my leg is turned out. My kneecap is facing the ceiling, right? As opposed to when I was doing parallel. So just for variety, I'm pointing my toes now, as opposed to flexing it earlier. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go into that mini squats, keeping the toes and knees aligned. So let's go ahead and do that. So bend here, extend the leg out, and once the foot hits the floor, that's it. So lift and then tap the floor. Keep the lifting leg straight. You are working those hip flexors, quads, a little bit of abdominals just to help with the lift. 8 more. Feel free to go at your own pace. I'm roughly counting, but we're all kind of going at our own rate. So work to fatigue. That's the main thing. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so that's our turnouts. Other side. Start with the leg mostly straight, not locked. So far we've gone to the side, we're going slightly to the front. I could go straight to the front for this. But since we're turned out, I'm kind of just going with the direction of that turnout. Now, if I still had you in parallel, I probably had you kick straight forward, but it would work similar muscles, which is the quads and the hip flexors. I should do the same thing on this side with the arms. Okay, let's go ahead and bend into that standing leg. Just kind of go into my plie just to set it up correctly, doing the same on both sides, and then I get the leg out there without changing. That's plie. Yeah, remember you don't have to squat super low. It's a very little bend. And feel free to stand up out of it at any point. Give me 4 more. Try to stay in it if you can. 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So now we're going to take the legs to the back. So we did the side, we did the front, we're going to go to the back. So I'm still lifting with the outside leg, even though I'm facing the chair and really there is no outside leg when I face the chair. We're going to go into parallel again. So what this means is as I lift my leg to the back, if you're keeping your foot flexed, toes and kneecaps face down. If you see my kneecaps and toes face you, then I've turned out. All right? It's not necessarily wrong, it just works different muscles. I'm trying to stay in parallel, keeping my pelvis square to the chair. I do have a little tilt, because if I don't, I'm not going to get much lift in the leg at all. But still, I'm working the same muscles. I'm just doing a little tilt, abs tight, squeezing those glutes. I'm going to have you work on your balance here if you'd like. So part of our torso leaning forward helps with the balance. As our legs go back and our torso leans forward a little bit, it helps you balance. Standing legs slightly bent. All right, so let's go ahead and pulse this. So we're here, since our toes not going to break off when we come down, we can just keep the toes pointed down. So little pulses, this is your arabesque. And then if you'd like to challenge your balance, just take your arms off the chair. It is there for you if you need to put your hand back down. You start with one arm. But what I would say is if you are working in your balance, try not to keep turning your head to look at me. Just go ahead and look at your chair or a space, a dot on the floor, and really concentrate on that unmoving dot. And that will help with your balance. Don't worry about how high your arms are or even where your arms are. You just want it to help with your balance. And I'm still pulsing for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a little break. We're going to stay on the same leg for just a couple more exercises. I know it's getting fatigued, but that's why we're taking a break. We're going to go back into it. So here, curl. When I curl, I don't drop my knee. I'm not pulling my knee in. I'm figuring out where my extension is. Look at where my knee is in space, and then from there, I keep my knee in space and I curl. You can flex the foot if you want, or you can keep your toe pointed. All right, so it's extend, bend, extend, and bend. Extend just means straightening the leg. Again, we're not pulling the knee in. So this line from my ears, shoulders, hips, and knees stays constant. So glutes constantly engaged, standing legs stabilizing. And again, if you like to challenge your balance, we're not doing any additional pulses here. We're just bending and extending. So if you want, again, to challenge your balance, I'm staring at that dot, holding my arms out in a position that helps me with balance. Maybe it's out to the side. I kind of hold it over my chair because I can just really quickly reach to my chair. But here we're curling for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. You know what's really tired? The standing leg, right? Yeah, the standing leg that's doing all the stabilization does get a lot of work. So I'm down to switch sides. So if you're wondering which one's your outside leg, you can just face front, touch your outside leg, or remind yourself. It's funny, sometimes when we turn around, we're like, what leg do we do? Okay, so first, same thing. This is what I call the full range of motion arabesque. You're going as high as you can without arching, without any excessive dropping of the torso. This motion is happening at the hips. Good. Oh, I gotta plug in my phone. So if you want to work on your balance, and you by no means have to, you can keep your hands on that chair the entire time. You can use one hand on the chair. Lots of options. Okay. So whether your hands are on the chair or not, we're going to do pulses. So you can pulse like this. Pulsing is smaller range of motion, usually at the peak of the contraction. So we don't pulse down here because it's just not very challenging. We pulse up here. Try not to turn out. That's turned out. Keep the pelvis square. And if you want to challenge your balance for the pulses, you can. Definitely challenging every time I turn to look at the screen. So, focusing. Keep squeezing those glutes. Bend into the standing leg if you need a little bit more. It also helps with balance to have your standing knee a little more bent. For 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Hands back down, take a break if you need. If you don't need a break, then go right into those hamstring curls. Take a break if you need, like this. Shake it out, shake it out. Standing, remember our feet are in parallel, so the standing leg is facing forward, it's not turned up. And then get into your arabesque, curl, and straighten. When you curl, you want to feel your glutes and your hamstrings. And when you straighten, you actually want to point the toe and engage the quads, even though you're going down with gravity. And you could technically uncurl without really using any muscles, right? Other than keeping your hip extended. But try to tell yourself to squeeze that quadricep, squeeze that leg nice and straight. Shall we try our balance? Oh, this is hard on this side. We all have our dominant leg. So I'm dominant when my right leg is lifted and my left leg is stabilizing on the floor. So this is my more challenging side. It's really hard for me. Take your time with this. There's no rush. It's not a competition of speed at all. Focus on the technique and the balance. Do 4 more. Try to keep that knee in the same spot the whole time, in space. Okay. Goodness, that was tough. So we're back to the first side. And we're going to do a little bit of turnouts. So you can turn your feet out like this. I'm still facing. Here's my outside leg, which happened in front leg. When you do a turnout, so both my feet are turned out. Now you can see my kneecaps here, and you can sort of see my heel here. This changes sort of what you feel a little bit in the glutes. I want you to actually bend the lifting leg a little bit. So the standing leg is soft, it's not locked. But I actually want you to bend the lifting leg as if this part, this outer part of my leg, I want to press it up to the ceiling. So I don't want to press my calves, my hamstrings, and my heel. I want to imprint this side of my leg to the ceiling. Okay. And we're pulsing. It should feel different. Different muscles engage when our legs are turned out. Feel all through here. Even a little bit to the lower back. Keep those abs nice and tight. You can always go lower. Listen to your body. Give me 8 more. 8, 7, 6. The outer edge of your foot should be facing the ceiling. 3, 2, and 1. Good. You don't have to turn around. I mean, you can just basically switch legs. The same thing. It's just so you can see what it looks like on the other direction. Both legs are turned out. Yeah, you want to practice balance? Sure. This one is more challenging. Good. So bent knee, turned out. Get the side of your leg imprinted on that ceiling. Have sight, shoulders down. Finishing up with the 8, 7, 6. We do a lot of reps in here, but I'd like you to always think about quality over quantity. So, yeah, you can do 50 reps of something, but what do the last like 20 reps look like? You know, gotta ask yourself that. We're gonna move into our upper body portion. I'm just gonna get my chair out of the way here. And I have cans of beans here. They weigh about a pound. But if you don't have anything, just have loose fists. I don't want you to squeeze your fist and create too much tension there. Even when I hold dumbbells or cans of beans, I'm not gripping it super tightly when I'm trying to crush the cans. It's a pretty light grip. Let's stand in parallel today. Side raise. And if you would like to, and you by no means do not have to, because this will be totally about balance, slightly bend into your knees. And if you like, you can do a leg lift. Now this is the upper body portion, so I want you to focus on the upper body. So if lifting the leg is taking away from the shoulder, whether it's coordination or balance, then keep the legs on the ground. You can lift in parallel, slow, control. There's not music or any set pace that we're working at. We're going right and then left. So as long as you do one on the right and one on the left, you'll be symmetrical. The symmetrical is being overrated. We do want to aim for symmetry, but we are asymmetrical human beings since we're either all right dominant or left dominant. So something to work towards, but probably won't ever get there completely. I'm trying to keep my feet in neutral. So again, I'm not turning out as I lift my leg. But your shoulders should start feeling that fatigue. Elbows are slightly bent. You're not locking the elbow joints. Okay, I'm going to be pulsed for the shoulder. So it looks like this. Small range of motion. If you want to do that with both feet on the ground, go for it. If you want, lift the leg and add that pulse for 1. Or do 8 on each side. I'm going to switch my legs, but not my arms. 4, 3, 2, and switch. Keep going with the arms. This part is about the arms, so we're fatiguing the shoulder muscle. Adding a balance component if you like. Switch again. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, give those shoulders a break. Roll it out. Palms up. Curl. Oh, let's get our feet back to parallel. Sometimes we think about arms and forget about the rest of our body. We forget about our posture. We forget about our foot position. There's always a lot to think about. Even doing something as simple as a curl, we want to think about the rest of our body. Chest up, raised abs, soft knees, stable stance. Full range biceps. Let's bring it to the front. Notice my elbows really haven't moved from its position underneath my shoulders. Whether I'm having a externally rotated curl or a neutral position curl, my elbows stay underneath my shoulders. Now I'm going to have you alternate. So as one goes down, the other goes up. Again, going at any pace you like. Just going to turn profile for you guys a little bit. Again, seeing that my elbows, they don't go anywhere. They're not going forward. They're not going back. We don't have running arms. Try to keep your wrist straight. So sometimes people, when they bend their elbows, they also bend their wrist. We're not working our forearms here, so we're not really working on the wrist. You also don't want the wrist to bend backwards. So you're really aiming for a straight line here of this wrist. Now I'm going to have you decrease the range of motion. Oh, I don't know why I turned. This is what I want to show you. So if this is the full range, we're going to go middle range. I'm still doing the alternating, but the range of motion has become smaller. Still squeezing my elbows nice and tight into my ribs. There you go. Feeling that focus. This is the pulsing range. This is the range that has the most amount of work because of the way gravity works in our biceps. All right, we're going to go into triceps. So getting to our feet parallel, sort of squat position, send the butt back. Our torso is straight and it's tilted. I'm going to lift our elbows. We're going to go right and left. Just alternate. Bend, extend, bend, extend. Now feel free to stay with this tempo. Sometimes when we can't see our arms, it's a little more challenging to coordinate. But if you want to move into the switch combination, basically as one straightens, the other bends. So this is still alternating, but the movement pattern is different. Instead of doing a complete straightening and bending, one arm at a time, both arms are constantly moving. One is bending and the other is straightening. Take your time with this. Again, you don't want running arms where your whole arm is swinging. Lift those elbows, keep the elbows still in space. Wherever your elbows are, as high as they can be, try to keep it there. And also try not to pull your weights or your fist all the way to your shoulders. 90-degree range of motion. That's the range, 90 degrees. All right, now I want you to go less than 90. So this is the peak. Think of like, you don't have to speed it up, but what I'm showing you is kind of a little fluttering of the arms. Almost it's like the weights or your fists are hitting the ceiling and you're knocking on the ceiling, like knock, 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 knock. You're knocking on the ceiling that's behind you and above you. And you're just kind of going like this. Pop, 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 pop. But with your triceps, you don't have to go that fast. The point is it's pulsing, so it's smaller range of motion. Try to maintain that neutral spine. Hit, hit, hit. So I'm barely bending my elbows. I'm basically bending it enough so I can straighten it. All right, keep the head and neck aligned with your spine by staring on the floor so you don't fatigue it. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, I barely did it. It's too much. All right. Pull. Back to the shoulders. Still in our neutral foot position. Just about another minute of this, and then we'll go into some push-ups and abs. The reason I start with bilateral movements, because moving in symmetry is usually the simplest. Stay with this if you like. Here's our alternating. As one goes down, the other goes up. You want the same movement pattern. Notice my dumbbells or my hands converge a little bit. They don't need to smack each other, but they don't go like that. They don't go out. They converge a little bit. So when you do this one arm thing, you still want to do that conversion. You don't want to punch out like this. It's not good for the shoulders. Another way to think about this is my weights or my fist is always over my elbows. See, it's over my elbows. And as I come in, it's over my elbows. This is not with my fist over my elbows. So if you try to keep those forearms as vertical as possible, it's another way of thinking about safety. Alternating punch. And if we were going to do smaller range of motion to really burn out the shoulder muscle, we could punch up here. That's actually quite challenging. We could also punch down here. So I'd like for you to pick what kind of challenge you want today. Down here, definitely challenging. Up here, challenging too, but only if you don't lock it out, because that's kind of you settling into your joints. Whew. I'm trying to decide which one's more challenging. It's really challenging. All right, well, that was another minute, and that was pretty torturous. So let's go ahead and do some push-ups, and then move into our abs. All right, put my beans away. The beans I'll never eat. Okay, so putting up my mat here. We're on our hands and knees. Wrists underneath the shoulders, knees under the hips. Tricep push-ups is with the hands right next to each other. So we'll do 8 of these. Bend those elbows toward the rib cage. Keep it nice and tucked. Tilt slightly forward. So notice my butt goes slightly ahead of my knees, and then it shifts back. So you don't want your butt to go behind. Slightly forward. Last 2 here with my rough counting. Now we're going to go wide. So hands nice and wide. A lot of times it goes wider than the mat. Or you can be on like really close to the edge of the mat. But this targets the chest more. You can stay in the same position, or if you want, you can move those knees back and get to a knee plank. So your body's in a straight line from shoulders, hips, and knees. And then from here, elbows actually do go out a little wider. I'm going to lower our chest to about elbow height. Do 8 of these. Inhale down, exhale up. This targets the chest more. 4 more. But any number you'd like. 3. I just have chosen 8. 2. And 1. Okay, if you want to do a few extras, feel free. I'm going to go into a plank. A push-up is a moving plank. For this plank, I'm going to get off my wrist, and I'm going to be on my toes. Because previously, I was on my knees for the plank while doing the push-ups. So here you want your shoulders over the elbows. You want your butt about shoulder height. Our toes are tucked under. Our heels are actively reaching to the back of the room. And we have our abs nice and braced. Glutes squeezing, quads squeezing. Eye gaze on your thumbs. Do about another 30 seconds, which, believe it or not, is about 5 or 6 breaths. So focus on the breathing. Inhale. Exhale. In and out. Press into those forearms. It's not just abs here. In and out. Slow, steady breathing. And give me one more breath. You can do it. Inhale and exhale. Good. Okay, let's come to our back. crunch is here. You can support the head and neck, really supporting the neck. Your head is the heavy thing that you're supporting. Or you're lifting, holding, so your neck doesn't have to strain. My feet are on the floor. I'm using my obliques, my rectus abdominis to lift straight up. Now, if I'm going to use my obliques, I'm going to add rotation. I'm going to bring the arm towards the opposite knee. My feet are hip distance apart. Exhale, bring it to the opposite knee. If you have any lower back issues, feel free to keep your feet on the ground or add a leg lift. It can be bent knee. So both my shoulder blades are coming off the ground. And then ultimately you can think about sort of bar principles. We're really extending the leg, pointing and kicking that leg. Option to keep the foot flexed, of course. Let's try to have active feet. Both shoulder blades come off the ground. The one attached to the reaching arm definitely comes off the ground. It's this one that sometimes stays on the ground. People kind of just like reach and roll. When you roll side to side, you're not really working your abs that much. You gotta lift both shoulder blades off the ground. So really work the glutes. Okay. Option to keep the feet on the ground. You can also hold your legs here, what we call tabletop. Imprint that lower back, have the legs nice and straight. All right. We're going to play with angles while we're crunching. So if your feet are on the ground, don't worry about the angle. We're going to be pulsing like this. You can pulse like this. You can pulse like this. And as you're pulsing, I'll show my legs bent. I'm going to start to lower my legs a little bit and pull it back in. So it increases the challenge to the abs as I'm pulsing. So if my legs are straight, pulse, pulse, lift, lift. Okay, and again, here's the option with the feet on the ground. This is the last burn. Pulse, pulse, pulse. For 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's give ourselves a little stretch here. Coming to my hands and knees. And extend the leg out to the side for the inner thigh stretch. And while my leg is extended out to the side, I'm going to round the spine and arch. So just get some motion in your spine here. And you'll notice that as you arch down that you'll feel like an even deeper stretch in that inner thigh. This almost releases the stretch a little bit. This movement in itself is a back stretch. Good. And just kind of turn a little bit to show you. Let's try the other side. Other leg to the side. Feeling the inner thighs. Around this way. Don't worry too much about how much range of motion you have in the spine. You're limiting your range a little bit when you have a leg stuck out there. Good. Bring that leg back in. Let's do a couple of these with our knees right underneath our hips. Good. Bring one of your legs forward, doesn't matter which, and kind of just settle into your hips. So basically, you're stretching here a little bit, your glutes, but it's really the back leg hip flexor you're stretching. Show you the second where I switch sides. You're supporting your body with your hands. So if you wanted to do the splits, you would just straighten your front leg. I can't do it. But this is the beginning of the splits. So other side, So here's where you're really stretching this back leg here. I'm just letting gravity work. I'm not trying to hold myself up. I just kind of like settle into my joints for the stretch. Whenever you're working out, you don't really want to settle into your joints. That's not the point of working out. You want to engage the muscles, support your body by contracting muscles. But when you're stretching, it's fine because you're not contracting the muscles anymore. You're trying to increase range of motion and lengthen those muscles. All right. Actually, tuck your back toes under and lift. I'm not sure which direction you're facing, but we're going to face front in a straddle. If you walk your hands to one side, you can have your feet in parallel, which you'll feel a certain way with your stretch, or if you have your feet turned out, it'll feel a different way in the stretch. Yeah, let's try the other side. I think it feels a little better for the turnouts. And if you come to center now, slowly heel toe your feet in. See how long you keep your hands on the floor until you're in a forward fold or a nice hamstring stretch. So from the side, this is what it looks like. All this is being stretched, even through your lower back. And go ahead and roll up one vertebra at a time. We did a little bit of stretch our quads already. When we did that low lunge stretch. So now I'm going to just focus on chest and triceps. We'll also get into our IT band. So if you take your right leg and cross it behind the left, and then take your right tricep, we'll also stretch your right obliques. How's everyone doing? Hopefully your muscles are warm, a little fatigued, feeling like jelly. Let yourself recover tomorrow. And what is tomorrow? What tomorrow's Pilates? You can do Pilates tomorrow. You can dance tonight. It's fine.